Claire, I think we should be talking about Wicker Man, but not just any Wicker Man. I'm talking about that amazing movie that stars one of my favorite actors, Nicolas Cage. It's gonna be fun, like, we're gonna be ripping it, like...
Oh, I would tear it a new asshole, like, oh my god.
So that's right, people. We're gonna be reviewing the 2000s remake of the film Wicker Man starring Nicolas...
Oh, no you don't. Listen here.
What?
No, we're not reviewing it. That's final. We're gonna review the original. You're gonna like it. Here, put the hats.
What does it...
Why do we have to...
Just put the hats on. Trust me, they'll make a lot more sense.
Alright, Doc Brown.
Our grandpa would be so proud of us.
Yes.
If a Irishman wears like a Scottish hat, wouldn't that be considered culture appropriation?
They're neighbors. They wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
I think they would mind.
Go cry in the corner, SJWs.
I'm sorry for the interruption, folks, but we're gonna be doing the original. I can't stand any of those memes, so we're gonna do the original.
Okay.
Now, let's start with a little history lesson.
Alright.
Okay, so picture this. It's way back in the 1970s. A little book comes out called Ritual. It's not a particularly long book. It only just covers like the murder of this young girl by a cult and stuff like that. However, it inspired a screenwriter. I think it was the screenwriter for Wicker Man. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he loved the book so much, and he also showed the book to a friend of his in Britain's sort of filmmaking industry. And guess who that guy was?
Christopher Lee?
Yes, Sir Christopher Lee.
Awesome.
Now this was a weird time in Christopher Lee's life because he was mostly known for his Hammer horror films, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dracula, Frankenstein, that one time he played Rasputin and all that kind of stuff. However, he was kind of getting bored with those movies because, as Christopher Lee said, each year that he was with Hammer Horror, the scripts got worse and worse every day, pretty much, it seemed. To the point where they got so bad that in one of the Dracula films, he said, I'm not even going to bother learning the lines in this. So that's why he doesn't talk in the entire movie, pretty much. I can't remember which one it was, but look it up, that's actually true. So, naturally, when he was given the script, he loved it so much because he thought this could be a role that could actually break that typecasting for him, pretty much. However, this movie wasn't shot with the greatest budget in the world, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
And because of that, they couldn't afford to pay Sir Christopher for this. So, he did this as a passion project, and he did it for free.
Nice.
Because he wanted to play the main bad guy in this so much, actually.
God, he was amazing.
He was the best part of the movie.
Before we get to Sir Christopher, let's talk about some of the other characters at first.
Let's start with the main character then.
Sir Howie, played by Edward Woodward.
Oh boy.
And wait, wasn't Edward Woodward in another movie involving a British cult also?
Hot Fuzz.
Holy shit, it was Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
The greater good.
The greater good.
Shut it!
Like, you can tell that this island just gets under his skin, pretty much.
Oh yeah.
And I thought for one moment he was going to strike Lord Summers out because of how pissed off he was about this pagan place.
Yeah, I thought he was about ready to get into a fist fight with them.
So, yeah, that's one criticism I might have, is that the main character is kind of hard to get behind a lot of the time.
Yeah. When, spoiler alert, when he burns to death on the Wicker Man, roll credits, I didn't care much about him.
I didn't care much too either, bro.
I didn't really care either that he got burned.
I mean, he was kind of a morally superior prick the entire time. Most of the time.
And like the entire time, like I'm watching him, I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't care, you're an asshole. You're so strict and you don't have any fun.
In fact, it's kind of weird that the pagan characters are actually more likable than him, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got personalities, and they seem like nice people in real life. Oh, interesting fact about the extras for this movie. This was actually filmed on an actual island off the coast of Scotland. And a lot of these people were actual pagans, apparently.
So, they're in Scotland, so that explains...
It's a very British movie, but it's also got a very Celtic vibe, so that's why they had it set in Scotland, pretty much. And I think that was intentional because they wanted to make a movie that highlights England's old religion, as they called it.
Ah.
Yeah.
I can admit, I liked the pagans in this one. They seem like a very interesting community, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some things that are a bit like tad like creepy, but otherwise they're really charming people.
What are you doing?
You got something in your
Stop.
You got something in your hair.
Another Bond actor is in it.
Oh yeah, the girl.
Brett Eklund as Willow.
Right, right.
I thought she was Swedish for the longest time.
Yeah.
Maybe she is, I don't know. Yeah, she plays the land daughter's daughter, Willow, and obviously.
Oh my god, there's two.
There's a scene with her in it that makes me a very happy man.
Yes, sir.
Would you both stop?
Okay,
I'm
stop.
right here.
I'm sorry.
But that scene also features a good song that I like.
Oh yeah, the Willow song.
Yep.
Kind of sounds like a lullaby almost.
Yep.
I think that's the point.
I think that's because back in the old days, if you wanted to attract a lover, people would sort of serenade you with a song, kind of in ancient cultic societies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's a very interesting lullaby. Instead of putting you to sleep, it's putting you in a
Don't say
sexual
it.
hype move. Well, let's not kid ourselves. This was around the hippie era.
Alright, you two, let's move on.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of other characters, my other favorite character was the landlord himself. Now, he's a prolific British actor who we've seen in a lot of things. In fact, I may have seen him in one of those Tales from the Crypt movies, possibly. And I swear to God, he's like that guy actor in Britain terms. Like, wait, aren't you that guy who was in that movie for that thing or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I would.
What
I
do you
was gonna say another character that I liked was the lady who owned that sweet shop.
Oh yes, the mother who reported the daughter missing. She's an interesting character.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you would have thought that she would have been distraught that her kid's missing, but
She's not at all.
and you think, wait, what's going on here, or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, let's also talk about another thing that a lot of people are somewhat confused about with this story: the music.
Yeah.
The music's a bit weird in this movie.
Well, at first the music at the beginning of the film, you're like, okay, it makes sense. But near the end of it, you're like, okay, wrap it up already.
Like, is this a musical? If I want to see a horror movie with musical, I'll gladly watch Sweeney Todd. Thank you.
Or Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Well, or Rocky Horror, yeah, totally.
Oh yeah.
I think the weirdest song would have to be the girls jumping over the fire song, actually, for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what's going on here?
Why is everybody naked?
To be fair, I wouldn't expect anything other than that with a Celtic religion thing.
I would say one of my favorite songs would have to be when they're having that festival like near the beginning of the film.
Oh, yeah?
Where the children are like holding the ribbon and dancing around the.
Well, that makes sense because they would have had stuff like that for kids in schools like that.
Mm-hmm.
Very folky.
Well, I guess that's the point because it's trying to capture that old-timey kind of folksy tunes that you would have heard from the olden days, even with, say, the 60s or 70s, which at the time would make sense. But when you look at it now, it's kind of odd the way they place this music in the movie. It's a bit distracting sometimes.
Yeah.
Including the song with the guy with the music thing.
But my favorite song is Willow's song.
Oh, well, obviously.
Not just because of that scene, but it's because of the music and the composition.
I suppose it's got a nice lullaby feel to it. But what's our favorite song, and you know what I'm talking about? The Christopher Lee piano song.
Oh yes.
You know the one. That's where we finally get to meet Lord Summerside with Christopher Lee. And this is an interesting fact, but Christopher Lee, before he became an actor, he almost became another thing actually. An opera singer.
Yeah.
In fact, his family, including his mother, actually had a lot of relatives who were, in fact, opera singers. And they almost convinced him to become an opera singer, but instead he had to become an actor because if you're an opera singer, you have to pay for your own room, right? Back in those days. So he had to become an actor because, you know, you could go in for free kind of thing. However, he did still manage to retain his lessons he got from opera. And this is mostly on full display with the piano scene and that golden voice of his. I meant to see the latest crack, the causes played, my own could many, my own could not take hold. Oh, be careful. If you're female out there, you might get pregnant if you hear that voice.
Why do you think I had
Panties be dropping.
Yeah.
Why do you think I had to get myself tested after that? It came out negative. I'm alright.
Actually, interestingly enough, if you want to hear even more Christopher Lee singing, you'll be surprised to learn that he's also a bit of a metalhead, actually.
Oh my god.
Yes, he did an album with, I think it was like Zakk Wylde or Tony Iommi.
Oh yeah, I think it was those guys, and he did metal accompaniments with that pretty much. And he might not be the best singer, but he's actually pretty good, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, now that we're finally here, what do you guys like the most about Christopher Lee's character in this?
He's very hypnotizing.
Oh yeah.
Interesting fact about him, I think what is the most interesting thing is that he's got a lot of charm compared to the main character.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, I was, like, kind of rooting for the villain in this case.
Hell, I didn't even think he was a villain almost.
He's not really a villain. He's just some guy who's
running a community, pretty much.
yeah, who's running his community, believing what he believes in, and just going with the flow.
Mind you, they are, sacrificing people still.
Which is the only thing that is wrong with it.
What really got me near the end is when Willow, the little girl, when she betrays Howie and she goes up to Christopher Lee. I love it when she's like, "Did I do alright?" Like, "You did wonderfully."
Yeah, I know.
Just the excitement on their faces is kind of charming, even though you realize, oh god, they're gonna kill this motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one thing that the Nicolas Cage movie hadn't had in that one.
Any charm.
It did have, I think, pretty much a reliable tone, very much.
Killing me will bring back your honey.
I think it relied too much on the idea that they were trying to both be faithful and do their own thing.
Yeah.
And those two tones, they kind of clash with each other a lot of the time. I mean, I love Nicolas Cage in this, and I think he's very, very entertaining, but it kind of lacks in something we call a consistent tone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, with the original one, it was about the idea about religion versus religion, right?
Yep.
With this one, it's about religion versus sexes, and it wasn't handled very well.
Yeah.
I think it was trying to be anti-feminist, but it makes the guys look like idiots in it, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the tones were very confused because they were trying to be both faithful to it and try to put their own new spin on it.
It became rather wooden to watch and like very boring, and you're kind of looking at the clock or your phone going like, when is it over?
And then when the crazy shit happens, you're like, did they just throw this in at the last minute?
Yeah, exactly.
Did they just give the bear costume to Nick and say, go crazy?
Yeah.
Well, be careful, he's still out there, folks. Looking for women to punch, I'm sure.
Oh, I know.
But don't worry, he's in the 12-step program to take care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's another thing I also want to talk about, the ending,
Yes.
where we finally get to see the Wicker Man itself.
Roll credits.
Now this is interesting because they actually built that Wicker Man, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And those are real animals in there. They didn't burn, mind you, but yeah.
Yep.
And according to a lot of the cast, it stank because of the animals, actually.
Ah.
Well, it basically would read like a barnyard.
That was the point. They wanted to make it authentic, I guess. Now this is interesting because it really brings up an interesting question about this, actually.
Yeah?
So, they've killed Captain Howie. What happens now?
Like, does
it work? Like, does it save the harvest for them?
And if it doesn't, what are they gonna do then?
Will they have to find a greater sacrifice?
I don't know.
But a real good question is, did Howard just leave without telling his superiors at all? Like, what if somebody comes looking for him?
Like, somebody is obviously gonna come looking for him because he'd probably be missing for a few days, maybe even weeks after that.
And also, he had a fiance, so you'd imagine they had family that were worried, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, she might have come looking to find him on the island.
Or even call the cops to go over there.
Like, exactly. Like, there's just so many things I don't understand.
But, besides that, were there any things about the Wicker Man that you maybe didn't quite like?
Well, obviously, it would be the main character.
Yeah.
Because you can't really get behind him at all.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for, like, the fact that he's such, like, a hardhead for, like, keeping his religion straight.
It sort of represents those stern authority figures that were pretty prevalent in British society at the time. I mean, you gotta remember, this was around the time where if your movie was considered a video nasty, it would be banned from England forever at some point.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Howie is supposed to be. He's supposed to represent the sort of stern upper class authority that people didn't like around that time.
Yeah. Do you know what I kind of dig a vibe from the Wicker Man?
What?
It felt like almost like a flower power kind of thing, you know?
Got that sort of hippie vibe, I think.
Yeah.
It was the mid '70s. Everybody was getting that hippie vibe. Not to mention a lot of hippies appropriated a lot of ancient cultures into the thing,
Yeah.
like Celtic things, paganism, all that stuff. I think that one criticism somebody always brought up is the movie's kind of long a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, admittedly.
It sometimes drags, don't you think?
Especially with some of the shots with like the music segments.
The music, I think, was a bit too drawn out, but
Yeah, like at first I thought it was okay, but then afterwards it's just like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Monty Python, get on with it.
Like, get on with it.
Yes, get on with it!
Get on with it!
Even God be like, get on with it.
Get on with it!
Well, that's interesting because I remember somebody did this review of the Wicker Man, and do you know what they compared it to?
What?
They called it the Citizen Kane of horror films.
Oh.
I don't know if that's correct per se, but it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's confidently made, first of all. It's got a very unique tone for horror films because it doesn't feel like you're being constantly dreaded. It feels like a surrealist kind of thing in a way.
Yeah.
Especially with the music.
And there are other movies like The Wicker Man.
Oh, yeah?
You know, like The Witchfinder General or something like...
I guess you could say it inspired films like that.
And Apostle.
I didn't even know this, but apparently there's also a sequel to Wicker Man.
Oh, yeah?
Oh God.
It's not as good as the first one, but they did manage to get Christopher Lee for a brief cameo in it, where he's essentially playing himself again.
And there's another movie that's like that that's coming out. That's coming out in July.
Is that the
Midsummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like this movie is like the golden standard when it comes to cult movies, or movies about a cult, pretty much.
Yeah.
But all in all, what would you guys have to rank this film?
I would rank it a 7.5 out of 10.
That's fair. Alright, what would you say?
I would give it a solid 8 out of 10.
Alright. Well, like I say, this is one of my personal favorite films, and I always like watching it. So I'm a bit biased, so I'm gonna have to give it I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10 too.
Well then, first off, what do you guys think of our hats?
I think they look pretty good.
It's so itchy though.
Yes,
That's the
but
point.
that was our review of Wicker Man. If you like the video, hit the like button if you haven't already.
Mm-hmm.
And hit the subscribe button with the bell.
Wow.
And you can follow us on our social medias, which will be in our description down below.
Exactly. Give me a minute.
So itchy.
Okay. And if you guys want to see any more of our videos, you can click our link and check any of our other videos like there. We got a couple good reviews you guys can check out, such as our review of, what was that film we did with Tom Hiddleston again?
High Rise.
Yeah, here's our interview. There's
My paint. You have to watch the movie in the review to get that reference.
Yeah, pretty much. But check out our review of High Rise there, and we got some more videos for you guys to look at. So I suppose we should say adieu then.
Alright.
Yeah.
See you then.
See you there, guys.
Can we take these off now?
Yeah, you can take the hats off now.
Oh, thank God.
You wear the frickin' hat.
I'll keep that in mind.